The next talk, our sixth for the evening, is going to be moderated by Mayank Tiwari. Now, Mayank Tiwari has so far been introducing the other moderators, so it is my privilege to introduce him. I have known Mayank for the last 30 years. I think I first met him in 1990. He has an enthusiasm which is totally infectious, so that the result is that even the Rail Enthusiast Society is a very enthusiastic society. Anyway, Mayank was one of the founder members of the society and is currently its joint editor and enabler of digital outreach. He's a serving railwayman, and one of his assignments about 10 years back, a little more than 10 years back, was the director of the National Rail Museum in New Delhi. While at the Rail Museum, he encouraged and enabled rail enthusiasts to bring to the table their passion for the deep knowledge of the subject and make better the museum and its activities. In this, Mayank was very successful. In fact, almost all the rail enthusiasts I have met who are not railwaymen have been through Mayank. He has introduced me to them. His continuing faith in the power of the rail enthusiast makes him an active member of the society. So it's over to Mayank.
Thank you so much, sir. Very, very kind words. But quite honestly, the pleasure of the day lies with me. It is with absolute happiness that I will introduce to the larger global rail enthusiast community today, Mr. T.R. Raghunandan, a friend now for a little over 12 years, when I was fortunate to meet him when I was director of the Rail Museum. Raghu is actually a career bureaucrat. In fact, he's a former career bureaucrat who is globally acknowledged as an expert on decentralization, and he has done wonderful work both for the Indian government and for many countries thereafter on this topic. But Raghu is also a man of many, many hobbies. And so what he actually did was something very unusual for a career bureaucrat who was rising very fast. He decided to sign off before his time for superannuation because he decided he was not getting enough time for his hobbies. Raghu actually restores vintage cars, and it's not very unusual to see him emerging from under the hood of the Austin or the Mini or his last large variety of cars that he has. And not only does he restore cars, he then goes zipping all over the countryside and the country very literally in these cars. Raghu believes cars have to be run. Raghu is a researcher of great persistence, diligence, and a lot of erudition, therefore. But the reason we're talking to Raghu today is because another one of his very interesting hobbies is to scratch build rail models. And in that, he demonstrates extraordinary skill. Let me not come between the man and you by going on, because I can actually go on forever about the many skills of Raghu. I'd rather you discover them slowly as they unveil themselves. The one overarching feature about Raghu is his sheer perfectionism for everything that he does. And ever the perfectionist, Raghu actually decided to record his talk in the morning because he wanted you to see it in the best light, literally. And the best light in his workshop and at home is in the morning and not at 5 in the evening India time. So Raghu, hi, if you'd just put in a quick hello to the audience here, because I know you want us to run the video that you have prepared for us.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayank. Can you hear me?
Absolutely and wonderfully.
Yeah, thanks, Mayank. Mayank is a dear old friend, and like I said, remarked, I've never met a railway officer who's not kind-hearted, warm, generous, giving, and Mayank is one of the picks of the crop. I mean, he's remained a dear friend for so many years. He gave me such an invaluable opportunity to interact in the Rail Museum and to do a lot of my own research work there. Yeah, the title of this topic of my talk is a recycler's approach to model making. And the reason is that I make stuff out of waste material. In fact, the models that I'm going to show you today are made from elephant poop, elephant dung, right? No, it's not my elephant, because my elephant has constipation. I buy paper that is made from elephant dung. And the first thing that happens when I tell people that my models are made of elephant dung is they smell it. I'm sorry to disappoint them. It does not smell of anything. It's just completely odorless. So Mayank will play the video first, and then we can take questions and answers. I can ramble on later on. So Mayank, over to you. You can play the video.
Thank you so much, Raghu. And let me just move everyone over to Is the audio coming through?
No.
No, audio is not.
Oh, that means that I forgot to tick the box. So I'll just
Yeah,
have to
Tick
I'll
that
have to
box.
just share the screen once again, share the computer sound, and here we go.
Hello, I am Raghu.
Better now?
I'm a railway enthusiast
Yeah, the sound is there. It's a bit soft, but it's there.
on a tour of my workspace.
And make your sound 100%.
Now
I
Video
have.
plays. This is at 65%. Yeah.
Okay.
you will see my garage space. I have good 4 bays. This is also the place where I do my heavy engineering. And up here is my light engineering workshop. I built this place to resemble an old railway cabin. Of course, railway cabins have unobstructed views. I have a huge jackfruit tree over here, but it's a nice place to work from. The way to the light engineering workshop is through this old spiral staircase. It is a little inconvenient in the sense that if one has to carry some heavy equipment upstairs, it's pretty difficult. But it's a nice way to go to the workshop. This is the junkyard. I built it out of scrap wood, but I still have to do the interiors. This will become a bit of an exhibition space. But anyway, let's go to the workshop. The workshop is nestled between several trees. This is a chiku, or a sapota tree. I have this mango tree just outside, and there is of course the huge jackfruit tree there. This is where I work. I normally come here in the morning at about 7:30 or 8 o'clock, and sometimes work till about 7 or 8 at night. That makes for about 12 hours of work over here. So let's go in and check out what's inside. So let me take you to my workshop, what I call my model room. It's actually a light engineering workshop, if you can say so. This is my workspace. Here on the left side, I sit at my laptop, do all my work over here. I try to keep my table as organized as possible. This is a very important piece of equipment that I use. It's an old press which I found in Ooty. It's very heavy, and I use it to press components. I keep my stuff labeled. This is to prevent disorganization, but it really isn't very conducive to working well, because I discovered that it's always better to have the tools that I use regularly at hand. So I'll show you where I keep all that stuff. On the right hand side of the entrance is my work table. As I said, this is where I keep all the tools that I use on a daily basis. My table tends to get very cluttered, and some bit of clutter just has to be accepted. but otherwise I've managed to keep my workspace clean. I find these ceramic cups are very useful to keep things, paper, bits of paper, and so on and so forth. These are parts for the YG cab on which I am working. I made it and then I had to dismantle it. It didn't look right. I have a lot of other tools over here. The most important one is a mini drill. I use it to drill a lot of parts. This is very interesting. This is my grandfather's spectacle case, and I use it to keep my drill bits and milling bits. This is not the best way to keep drill bits. I intend to make a little piece of wood and put it there so that I can identify them as per their diameters. I have some other interesting tools here. This is a roller tool. Let me just take it out. Yeah, this is a roller tool, and what I can do with it is to bend pieces of paper or roll pieces of paper. I can turn it, and if you feed a tube or paper through this, and depending on how much you press this down, I can get the paper to curve. This is again an interesting equipment. This is a rivet punch. One can put metal over here, and you can change these dies here, and then you can punch them that way. So you can get punched out rivet faces like this. This is very useful if you want to do riveting detail on any model that you have. One of the other things that one needs to do properly is to ensure that all parts are arranged in a systematic way. This is easier said than done. I have this little box that I rescued, in which I do manage to keep a lot of parts and little things like screws, nuts and bolts, rivets, etc. This helps me to systematically keep my parts that I make. My wife gave me this very nice plastic arranger. I think it's basically for people who do sewing, but it can be used for any hobby. And you have compartments which you can customize. So I keep a lot of my parts that I make into this 3-tier system. Saves me a lot of space. I'll show you these parts later on in detail. This is the model that I built first. This is built about 10 years back. It was completed on 11th February 2010. So it's actually 11 years back. And it's showing its age. It is, in fact, it's an interesting experiment, this B-class locomotive. I did it with very, very few tools. I just did it with the tools that you would have in a very nice knife, but it has full riveting detail. Yes, paper tends to sag over the years and things are falling apart slowly. So it's a good test of how durable paper is as a material. But it also taught me how to be precise and to concentrate on all the detail. This has a lot of detail. In fact, you can see the toolbox opens here. The sandbox opens here. So all these details have been incorporated. I will make more DHR B-class locomotives because I do have the drawings, but they will be now in metal and epoxy. There are a lot of other stuff that I keep here. I find this Swiss set of carving tools very useful, and of course Hughes is now occupying prime space on my work table at the moment. This is my family electric iron. It's an old electric iron, very heavy, so I use it sometimes to press paper. I label stuff a great deal. So all my cupboards are labeled. In fact, this I bought second hand. It was being discarded by a school. It was from a chemistry lab, and I find this very useful as a table to work because it gives me actually 2 workspaces and plenty of under the counter. This is what is known as a Munshi table. It's actually a double Munshi table. I'm sorry that the light is very bright outside, but that's in the nature of things because I sit up here and I have these beautiful trees outside. So this Munshi table is meant for being kept on the ground and you can sit cross-legged and work on them. I have mounted it up on a table. I use this for long-term storage. So there's a lot of parts that I'm making for various locomotives. They are here, paper. It's got a lot of cubby holes here. And here again I have stored a lot of paper parts. These are parts for another locomotive. There are paints over here and so on. That's the elephant poo paper with which I make my models currently. These are a few of my railway lamps that I have. This is a BB&CI Guards lamp. I still haven't gotten around to restoring it. Yeah, it's manufactured, or whatever it's the manufacturer, as the plate says, 1909, and there is a BB&CI stamp somewhere. Where is it? Yeah, here it is. BB&CI. Yeah, that's it. So I picked this up. This is, of course, something that's very familiar to all railway officers and staff. It's one of those lamps with 4 lights used at switches. This is an old coach lamp. It's not from a train, but it's probably from a veteran car. I keep changing the displays in this room because it's interesting to keep. So this is an old fan that I picked up in Kollam, from a place which was dismantling old ships and boats. And this is a gramophone from the 60s. And of course I have my Bluetooth speaker here. The gramophone really resonates when I switch on my music. Every workshop, I'm convinced, must have a day bed. So this is where it can be very pleasant during the day. It can tend to get a bit hot in summer, but the mornings are, anyway, whatever might be the time of the year, the mornings are very pleasant. And that, of course, is the locomotive on which I am currently working. Now let me take you for a closer look. This is the YG locomotive on which I am working. This is made in elephant poo paper, shampoo bottle caps, cardboard, bits and pieces of aluminum, all kinds of other things, coat hangers and stuff like that. It's it has taken an agonizingly long time to do. I started this in 2013. That was when I started making the first drawings. Now I've kept it in the center of the room because I need to work on it. I need to work all around it. I need space to work around it. The under chassis is completed, and the under frame is completed, the chassis is completed. This is not a moving model, but a lot of the detail, I mean, I would say all the detail that you would find in a locomotive, including underbody detail, has been modeled. That's what's taken me a bit of time to do. I am currently in the process of fitting up the cab. I did fit the cab, but it did not look good, so I had to discard my first attempt, and I have to do that again. I found that cardboard is just not stiff enough to take the shape, and you know, this last bit was a little too high. It needs to be supported from below. All that will happen. It's not too difficult to do. This is the tender for the locomotive, and as you can see, there's a lot of riveting detail. The rivets on the side of the tender match exactly the number of rivets that are on the original locomotive. I used the punch that I showed you earlier to do the riveting on this locomotive. Yeah, this is as it should be, the rear of the locomotive, because these locomotives have undergone a lot of changes during their working life, but I'm trying to make a model of what it looked like when it was new. So I hope to reproduce all those original details. Here too there's a lot of underbody detail. In fact, even the brakes are there, which I will show you. And that's the kind of detail that I'm able to do, and that's what I try to replicate on my models. So let's see, maybe a month more and hopefully this locomotive should be complete. This is the tender of the locomotive. As you can see, there's a lot of detail. I've been able to capture all the detail. So let me just show you what's underneath this. The top of the tender has been not fixed down, so I can show it to you. This is what can be seen here. That's the level of detail here. All the brake connections, levers, all of it has been modeled. It was quite a devil of a job to collect all these details because no blueprints were available. I was able to spend 2 days in Rewari, and I crawled under the tender. I was able to take a lot of photographs, plenty of measurements, plenty of videos, and on that basis was able to get the detailing done. This is will stand me in good stead, because even later if I want to make models in metal, this will allow me to do so. This is the lettering that will go on to the side of the tender. This is a bypass pipe that fits on the side of the smoke box in front, the reversing lever, the glass tubes, the lubricating equipment, the bracket for the pressure, steam pressure, and the vacuum gauges. That's the vacuum and the brake equipment. That is an oil cooler which is fitted on the top of the boiler. That is the generator, the dynamo that fits on top of the boiler. These are the lamps. That's what they look like. I managed to get the curvature of the glass because I cut it out of an old shampoo bottle. And this, of course, is the crowning glory, the front of the cab. Let me show you the top view of the YG. There's a lot of detail here. I still have to put the smokestack, but all the valve details have been put. I have to clad the steam dome, but I have fitted the valves and the steam manifold with the whistle also. So there's a lot of detail over here. Something that took me a lot of time was to put the cladding on top. So I have put spacers as in the original and cladding, and I had to cut these portholes. Now this is a detail that is often overlooked in models, but on a 1:16 scale locomotive I cannot afford to miss these details. These brackets were made from aluminium, actually from a coat hanger, and they are of two lengths because these are longer, because they are fitted on the boiler with which has a narrower diameter. The smoke box is of a larger diameter, so these brackets that are fitted on the smoke box are slightly shorter. so that the grab rail remains at the exact straight line actually. This is the reversing mechanism. This is going to be a fiddly job fitting it because I can only fit it after I fit the floor, and it has to pass through the floor to sit on this extension of the cross member of the chassis. So that's where it's going to sit. Let me now take you downstairs and show you the heavy engineering workshop. This is a distracting view from the window of my upstairs workshop. It's summer here, the barbets and the cuckoos are in full cry. I get a lot of birds. I get the tree pie. It's a breeding season at the moment. And today they don't happen to be here. But it's a very restful place to work from. I am close to the road, so there is a lot of traffic noise. That is compensated by these birds. Let me take you to the heavy engineering workshop. This is also a place where I keep my old cars. There's a lot of interesting stuff here. That is a mechanism for a tower clock. When I bought it, my wife asked me whether a wristwatch would not be sufficient, and that's the bell for the tower clock. What I've tried to do is to keep the clutter here to a minimum. It's a difficult thing to do, and I want to slowly make this into a place where I can store a few artifacts, including some railway stuff. I have some of these reproduction plates that I bought from the Rail Museum. This is my 1964 Ambassador Mark II. It's been with the family since new. That's my wife's Austin 7 1933 model. We drive around a lot in these cars. That's the MG TC 1946 model, and my wife's Morris Minor there, and beyond that is the workshop. So let me take you around to the workshop and show you what's here. So this is the heavy engineering workshop. This is a CNC mill. It's a Proxon miniature hand-operated mill, which I got converted to CNC. I have not used it because I am not very familiar with CNC operation, but it's been set up for me. I must learn CNC because it will save a lot of time when I go on to metal and epoxy. Sometimes I wonder I should not have done this. I should have continued to operate it by hand. But anyway, now that it's done, I learn a new skill. Then I have this metalworker. I am actually doing some axles for a locomotive on it. This lathe is actually as good as any American lathe. In fact, I found that marks like Shearline and Harbor Freight actually order their lathes to be made from China. And this is a Chinese lathe imported into India, and I find that it's quite good for my purposes. I have this miniature Proxon bandsaw. This is very useful if you're cutting thin slivers of wood for various models. But one thing that you need in a workshop is a lot of storage. So I have shelves all over the place. I have these old army ammunition boxes. They're very good to store stuff there. Some old railway boxes too. These I salvaged from the railway workshop in Mysore. They were throwing them away. I got them. And I have a grinder and a wire brush, big bench vise, and of course a large heavy duty drill press. The good thing about Bangalore is that one can get a lot of equipment at bargain prices. Software companies frequently renovate their offices and they throw out perfectly good equipment. So these are safes that I picked up at a bargain price. I use them for storage of a lot of stuff, and I label them because all my power tools and other equipment that I don't use on a daily basis are stashed away here carefully in these very good. Let me show you some of the locomotive models. These are not made by me. These are meant for a garden railway that I hope to make in 1/16 scale. These are manufactured by Model Engineering Company in Kolkata. They don't make it in this scale unless to special order, so I got them to make it in 1:16 scale. They normally make it in G scale. This is a ZDM2 which used to run in Matheran, and this is, sorry, not a ZDM, this is an NDM2 which used to run in Matheran, and this is an NDM6 that runs in Darjeeling. I will have to paint them and weather them for operation on my garden railway, which is a freestyle garden railway. I have just got from them these running gear for building a Darjeeling D-class Garrett. That's going to be a challenging project because I will have to build the upper body, but I'm looking forward to it. It will be a detailed job to be done in brass. I hope you enjoyed this visit to my dreamland, to this haven of mine. We model makers are reclusive people, and we need the time. We need to concentrate on what we do, and we need to organize our time very well so that we can get some stuff done. But at the same time, we yearn for a community, and the Rail Enthusiast Society has been that community for me. All of you are welcome to visit my place. Whenever you are in Bangalore, call me and come over and take a look at what one is doing. I hope to learn a lot from you. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
My God, Raghu, that was completely mind-blowing. Even after so many years, I often wonder where on earth you find the absolute patience and the diligence to do what you do so accurately and so wonderfully. Let me read out a few comments for you, because while I was sharing the screen, I have been unable to look at them. But if we look at them together, here they are all over the place. Vikas says special affection. Raghu, you're a perfection personified. How do you continue picking up new skills? Awestruck, treasure indeed. Just wow, Raghu sir. That was 3 people here. Let me go back a little and see. Okay, so before that, so there's an interesting question over here for you, Raghu. Mr. Jayal Singh wants to know, why did you choose elephant dung paper? Your attention to detail and authenticity is remarkable. I'm sure you know more of the YG loco parts than persons like us who have worked with the YG. I suspect a statement which is true. Your response to that.
Well, to the first question, it's all Mayank's fault. Actually, one of those wonderful days when I was sitting in his office, Mayank was improving the souvenir shop in the rail museum, and there's a company called elephantpoopaper.com, and there's a lady called Mahima. I mean, she was a entrepreneur who was manufacturing this paper, and she happened to walk into Mayank's room, and she's talking about this paper, and I said, well, this is not a bad material with which to make a model, because it'll be a nice talking point, and it kind of fits into my idea of recycling. This is ultimate recycling, you see, recycling elephant poop. So I get asked that question a lot of times, and it's a nice thing, but it takes a lot of time to work with paper. Paper is like watercolor. You cannot, it's very difficult to control, and after some time you learn how to mold paper into compound curvatures and things like that, but it comes with practice. So it's a little bit of a it's a tricky thing to start off with. I wouldn't suggest it to anybody to begin with it because it takes a lot of time. It's much easier to work in metal and plastic and epoxy and acrylic. Well, as far as the YG is concerned, there are no drawings. I have looked far and wide. I think there are drawings probably in Philadelphia and in the University of Texas. I was supposed to go there. If the pandemic had not intervened, I would have gone there, but that would have happened this year. So there was only one choice for me. It was to visit the museums and measure out locomotives. I've had people being very suspicious when I visit museums. In Mysore, once they stopped me and I had to meet the DRM and explain to him. He was very nice as usual. And then I was allowed to take photographs. So what I do is I think I've done about 7 or 8 visits to these locomotives. And when I go there, I concentrate only on very few parts. It's very, very easy to get daunted by looking at the locomotive in overall terms. So I always start from below. I start with the wheel, with the chassis, with the running gear, and so on and so forth. And there are some very good tips that I've got from master modelers. There's a gentleman called Gerard Wingrove. He probably is in his late 80s now. He's one of the 3 or 4 modelers that I admire. He's a MBE, a member of the British Empire. He is an automotive modeler and a diorama maker. And he has written this book. The beauty about these masters are that they are absolutely generous with sharing their secrets. So in his book on how to make models, which is about for 35 years old, he describes how to photograph models, how to extrapolate measurements, and so on and so forth. So these are things that I have done. I saw an observation here that Telco might have the drawings. I did approach Telco and nobody responded. They did not. I don't think they had the drawings. This is the sad part. I approached RDSO. They did not have the drawings. All that they have are blueprint line drawings, which give you the broad measurements. But something like the underbody detail, the brake and things like that, we don't have any details. I got an invaluable book many years back from the Mysore Rail Workshop. I went to the Mysore Rail Workshop in 1990 and I got my only chance to ride in the cab of a locomotive. It was doing shunting operations. It was an old YG. Unfortunately, YG 3565 was scrapped. And in fact, this model is going to be numbered YG 3565. I'm trying to reproduce the detail of that locomotive. I took a few photographs of it. Lovely Anglo-Indian crew. I felt very sad. I still remember that evening when I walked away. The locomotive was steaming in the setting sun. I can never forget that sight. So there in the Mysore Railway Workshop, they had a maintenance manual for YG, YP, WG, WP, and they were throwing it away. They had thrown it outside. So I, picked up all those papers. So I have some drawings that others do not have access to, but otherwise I've had to make my own drawings. Well, the beauty about a steam engine is that it's a very honest engine. It's a very transparent engine. Except I think it's the purest mechanical artifact other than a wind-up watch or a wind-up clock, because even unlike in an internal combustion engine, the output from the engine can be seen on the crankshaft and on the pulley which connects the timing chain. But in a steam engine, apart from the 2 pistons, the piston and the valve, which is concealed from view, every single other movement is exposed to the outside world. So you can trace how the to and fro motion of the piston is converted into rotary motion of the wheel, how that is translated through the valve shirts, valve gear, back into the countervailing movement for the valve, how the reversing system operates. The only other thing that you cannot visualize is the generation of electricity from the steam turbine, because those are the only electrons flowing through, the only microscopic motive force flowing through a locomotive. Everything else is out there for you to see. So it's not difficult to learn what a locomotive is. Yeah, I know a YG locomotive or a YP locomotive very well. I don't know if I'll be able to restore it, but certainly I will know how it runs and why it runs and what goes where and why. I think you're on mute, Mayank.
So, Raghu, your passion and your enthusiasm for what you do has absolutely come through here. And I think Atulya Sinha is asking the question that everyone wants to ask you. He says, just wondering, how many man hours have you devoted to the YG model? Even
I think I have
structure.
not. I have not kept track, but it must be in excess of 3,000 hours, maybe 3,500 hours, because this is much more complex than the Darjeeling DHR. Of course, the DHR, I think I took about 1,000 hours. So this probably is around 3,000 to 3,500 hours. My next model, which is a bit of a secret because Mayank knows the secret, but the point is that in the next model, I'm actually keeping a logbook. So I intend to be much more systematic about the amount of time that I'm spending for a model. My gold standard is to complete a model apart from the drawings within 6 weeks, and that is what Gerard Wingrove achieves. He achieves this, and it can be done by simple organization and being very organized, fiendishly organized, if I may say so. It is possible for you to do it.
Wow. Vikas says, I really love the natural setting of your workshop and the views. Clearly a work of love. How do you keep yourself motivated for continuous improvement?
This is a wonderful place to work in. So yeah, it's nice. It builds a kind of rhythm. And I know it's a very selfish thing for me to say, but I enjoyed the lockdown because I didn't have to have a guilty complex about spending time at home. And apart from, shall I say, death by Zoom calls, I spent most of my time working on the model, and I was able to gain a lot of momentum. So it's a question of allocating time. I don't have a television at home. I don't have a Netflix or Amazon connection. I've taken myself off Facebook, and that's how you create time to do this.
Absolutely stunning. And clearly somebody who knows you from the other side of your life. Ujjwal here says, T.R. Raghunandan sir, I am truly enchanted by you in person, whether it's work as an IAS officer and your book on the bureaucracy, and then your discourse on decentralization and Panchayati Raj, and then your stand-up in the CPR forum on Indian bureaucracy, and now this workshop. Hats off to you, sir. There is so much to learn from you, truly inspiring. That actually brings, glorious words, and since truly well-deserved, as I know everything that you've done in different fora. But sir, let me ask you a question now. I remember you once telling me that you started model making at a very young age. Now, if you were to try to popularize model making of any sort or any form in India, what would you actually do and how would you go about it?
That's a good question. Yes, I started making models. I think the first model that I made was when I was 8 years old. I come from a fairly large family. I have 5 older sisters. I was the youngest. My parents were quite old when I was born, and both my parents were quite busy. And while we were not poor people, my father was an austere person, and he would not give us toys to play with. So I ended up making a lot of my toys. My father was a very generous person, stiff at times. So I think in a way it was good that he denied me, access to some of the toys that were then available. There wasn't much available anyway. So that's how I started making things out of, bottle caps and toothpaste boxes and things like that. And I just stuck to it. I think one of the important things to remember is that there are times in your life when you just drop this. When you're preparing for an examination or you're falling in love and all that, you stop doing this. But then what happens is that as long as you retain some element of connect with your hobbies, which unfortunately a lot of people lose in the first 5 years after they join up for a job. If you retain that connect for which you need to make a special effort, then your hobby continues. But I think a big thing was the sense of community. And that's where I think that Mayank, in fact, rekindled it. I had a guru, a young gentleman who was probably a couple of years older than me, and he was a marvelous modeler. He passed away suddenly of a heart attack. He was an aeronautical engineer, and he was a superb car modeler. At the age of 35 or 36, he was just standing at a bus stand, and he just passed away. And that traumatized me so much that for about 10 to 12 years, I did not do any model work. I used to feel terrible even looking at my kids. The paints dried up, my brushes all withered away. And it was all rekindled because I went to the National Rail Museum around 2006 and met Mayank, and then slowly from there it began. So you need a community, you need friends, you need somewhere to celebrate your small successes every day. And we have a lot of quirky people in the modeling world, so it's nice. So what I would do is to give children things to do with their hands. During the pandemic, I have actually given children, friends, children, things like, simple, easy to make paper models, which are now available. So many of them are available on the internet. In fact, there's a very good beginner's version. It's a colored model of the DHR, which is available as a free download from the Canon website. Japanese websites are fabulous for paper models. So something like that is something that anybody can start with very few tools. As I said, the only tools that you require for making models of that nature are tools that you find in a child's geometry box. It's a very good way for parents and children to sit together and do something other than just staring at mobile phones. So some friends of mine wrote back to me and they called me and they posted pictures of what their daughters and sons had made, and it made me very happy. There's only one difference that I find, that and it's a very interesting thing. While I am hung up on steam engine models, I find a lot of people who are half my age, who are about 32 years old, are very interested in diesel models, in electric models. So it's wonderful. I never used to bother about diesels and electric. Grey porridge, as far as I was concerned, everything looked the same. But today, because of these young friends of mine, I am beginning to take an interest in the aesthetics of diesels and electrical. So it's a community. You will never lose if you're part of a community which is bonded together by one common interest, even though there are diverse facets of that interest. So that's the way it is with rail enthusiasts and with models. You get interested in other things, other people's passions.
Raghu, one thing we are very sure of in the Rail Enthusiast Society is that we'd seriously like to rope you in when we start our initiatives in trying to get the younger folk more involved with what it is that we do here. An absolutely amazing talk, a breathtaking environment for us. Thank you so much for sharing your fantastic workspace. In fact, can I use some insider knowledge and share it with the people who are on the talk today?
Yeah.
Raghu and Aditi, his wife, have actually made with their own hands every little brick which has gone into making their house. Now, try to digest that one. And Raghu, just a minute or two on this story, please, because I think this is one of those fantastic things that, if you permit, may I request you to share?
Yeah, well, we when I was in the government, the one thing I did not want to do was to live in a government colony, because I didn't want my child to learn the civil list before the alphabet. So at the first opportunity, we decided to move to a place where we can build our own house. And we wanted a slightly larger piece of land. So we drove out of Bangalore to this tiny village called Whitefield. Whitefield is now the hub of Bangalore's IT industry. And we spent all our money buying land, a fairly large piece of land, as you can see. And we had absolutely no money to build a house. So we did a lot of innovative things. The house is constructed of soil cement blocks. We've salvaged a whole lot of windows and doors. We ended up doing the wiring ourselves, the plumbing ourselves, a bit of the flooring ourselves. And we've been doing odd jobs on the house since then. Houses like this, the work never ends. And you always want one extra room, to keep your YG model. And then tomorrow some other model. So what happens is that we've been adding rooms to the place like there's no tomorrow. So it's just growing. Now we built another house which is on the edge of a forest, and I do get elephants. So I must train them to poop where I want them, where I want the poop to be, and maybe set up a paper industry. I don't know.
Raghu, thank you so much. May this enthusiasm that you have, this passion that you have for what you do, may it only grow and may it inspire many, many more people to follow you, till maybe some of them can reach half or a little more of the levels of mastery that you are at. Really appreciate your reaching.
Thank you very much, man. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Raghu. Thank you.
Thank you.
At the end of this amazing talk, now I hand over to Vikas for taking over for the next set of quiz questions, should he want to do so.
Can you hear now?
Yes, Vikas. Now we
Yeah.
can.
Yeah, sorry. So the correct answer was Ariyalur, a series of major railway accidents in 1954 to 56, which prompted the resignation of the railway minister. And Mr. V. Anand got it right. So let's go to the next question. So fill in Vansajalaya, Bhairoli, Nagarcoil. What is the next one? I give you a small hint. It's the easternmost junction of Indian Railways. No, Tinsukia is not. Any more guesses? Yeah, Arun Bhargava got it right. It is Makum. At this rate, I think we will have to go for a draw of lots at the end of today's session, because so far we asked 9 questions and all 9 of them have been answered by different people. So to pick the top 3, we will have to do a draw of lot. Let's go to the next one. This is an easy one. Fill in Varwala, Sapor, Kanyakumari, which is the next one. Ledo is correct. And the first one is Srivardhan Kekatpuri. Okay. So we stop screen here before we go to the next one. Mayank, we have time now?
Vikas, we are good for another 7 minutes. If you want to, you can go right ahead.
No,
Six
Dr.
minutes.
Stephen has joined us. What I would suggest is maybe if Apu can share a few pictures and then we move on to Dr. Kosi. He has already joined us.
No, Apurv is already on another talk, Vikas.
Okay.
So yeah, Apurv is a busy man. You keep forgetting. He's on another talk on another.
Oh, sorry. I think we had a bit of this thing. Arun Bhargava says that he answered it first. So let me just check.
Okay, just cross check.
Yeah. Arun Bhargava did answer before Srivardhan. So yeah, Arun, you are correct.
So does that make somebody who's answered twice, Vikas?
Yeah. So Arun
So we have
Bhargava
one
is
clear winner.
Yeah, which is Arun
So
Bhargava.
far.
Yeah.
Excellent. You have some more questions for the day.
Yeah. I will.
So far we have one person who's leading the pack.
Yeah, where's Arun?
And then a lot of tie breaks to take care of.
Yeah.
Wow. That's looking more and more interesting. So Vikas, do you want to shoot a question or two more just now?
Yeah. I'll do.
Perfect.
So, okay. Now this is an interesting one. Let's see who gets this right. Some of the railway men would definitely get it right. Name one of the sections which was converted from narrow gauge to meter gauge, and then again from meter gauge to broad gauge. This is in Rajasthan, but not Jaipur Sikar.
You clearly have everyone foxed.
No, not Vankaner Morvi. That's
Okay,
not
answers
Munna
flying in
Bao.
now.
Yeah,
There's a Munna Bao Pali option here.
yeah. Okay, I think I'll give it out because this was a slightly harder one. It is Peeper Road to Bilara.
Oh boy.
Now, so now for the last question, this is an easy one. Let's see who types it first. So I'd give an easy one this time, a real easy one. Which country did the YAM-1 locos come from? Yeah, Arun Bhargava has got it right. No, somebody else. Oh, just before Arun.
Suro has it before Mr. Arun Bhagra.
Yeah, Saurav. Yeah, so Saurav becomes the second one to get two correct ones. So you have, so far we have Arun Bhargava and we have Saurav. So who are in the lead.
Okay.
Now let's go to the next session.